Warning, what you're about to hear may cause headaches, nausea, or sudden bouts of critical thinking. Side effects include questioning the government, mocking bureaucrats, and in rare cases, spitting out your coffee when Brian goes full MAGA. If symptoms persist, don't call the CDC, they just resigned.
America's health leadership is in free fall. This week, multiple top CDC officials, including Dr. Deborah Horry and Dr. Daniel Jernigan, quit their posts after the ousting of Deputy Director Susan Monterez. Why? Because the new sheriff in town, Trump's health secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has been butting heads with them non-stop, calling out what he says is decades of corruption, pharma favoritism, and politicization of science. Critics are screaming that the CDC has been weaponized. Supporters are cheering the shakeup as long overdue, and the headlines look like something out of a Netflix drama. The question is, are we watching accountability in action, or just the latest season of Washington's never-ending circus? Let's bring in the crew. Brian, he's already said RFK Jr. should replace the CDC logo with a MAGA hat and a shot of ivermectin. Rachel, our independent voice, who's probably wondering if anyone in Washington actually cares about science anymore. Daniel, the conspiracy theorist, who's already stringing red yarn between the CDC, Big Pharma, and Bill Gates' ranch in Wyoming. And Skylar, our progressive, who thinks this whole thing proves conservatives are trying to burn down institutions just to settle political scores. And me, Artie, trying not to catch whatever bug the government's sneezing out this week. Tonight's episode is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series. If you like action that feels one step ahead of tomorrow's headlines, grab The Covenant Protocol and The Prophet Directive on Amazon today. And keep your eyes peeled for Book 3, Black Echo Rising, coming this December. While Washington fumbles public health, Caleb Rourke is busy saving the world. So here's where we're at. The CDC just had a mass exodus of leadership after Trump's health secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. clashed with the brass. Susan Monterez, the deputy director, was pushed out. Then Dr. Deborah Horry and Dr. Daniel Jernigan followed her out the door. Now critics say the CDC is being weaponized, while supporters say it's finally being cleaned out after years of bad science and politicization. The question, is this reform, revenge, or just chaos? Let's break it down. Brian, you're first up. Brian, was this the swamp finally being drained inside the CDC, or just political house cleaning dressed up as reform?
Call it whatever you want. It's long overdue. The CDC has been playing politics for years, not science. During COVID, they flip-flopped more times than Kamala Harris on a policy question. Masks work, masks don't work. Stay 6 feet, no wait 3 feet. Shut down schools. Oops, never mind. It was a disaster, and people lost trust. Trump sending RFK Jr. in there to shake it up was exactly what had to happen. If some bureaucrats don't like it and pack their bags, good. That's not chaos, that's accountability.
All right, but critics say this is revenge politics, getting rid of experts just because they don't toe the line. So, let me press you here. Brian, are you at all worried this weakens the institution at a time we might actually need it?
Nope. The institution was already weak. Trust was already gone. Keeping the same people in charge doesn't restore credibility. It just guarantees more of the same. If anything, clearing them out and bringing in people who aren't afraid to admit mistakes gives the CDC a shot at redemption. You don't fix a broken engine by polishing the hood. You rip it apart and rebuild it.
Okay, fair, but let's go one more. Do you think RFK Jr. is the right guy for the job? Health Secretary shaking up the CDC? Or is this just going to be non-stop fireworks?
Fireworks are fine. At least it means someone's awake at the wheel. RFK Jr. has been fighting Big Pharma his whole career. People may not agree with all of his takes, but he's the only guy in Washington who isn't afraid to punch sacred cows. That's exactly why Trump brought him in. And if it ruffles feathers, good. We've had enough rubber stamps. I want fighters in there, not lab coats playing politics.
Rachel, Brian says this is accountability, not chaos. But independents like you always ask the hard question. Are we fixing the problem or just creating a new one? Do you see this as cleaning house or just political score settling?
Honestly, it looks like both. There's no doubt the CDC lost credibility during COVID and needed reform, but there's also no doubt this purge has politics written all over it. When you fire leaders en masse, people don't see reform. They see retaliation. And once people believe public health is just another political battlefield, it becomes even harder to restore trust. That's the real danger here, not the resignations themselves, but the perception that science is now a partisan weapon.
Okay, but if the old guard was part of the credibility problem, doesn't new blood help? Or are we just making it worse? Can the CDC actually rebuild trust after something like this? Or is the brand permanently broken?
Trust is fragile, and once it's gone, it's almost impossible to rebuild. You don't restore confidence in science by replacing experts with partisans. You restore it by transparency and consistency. The CDC has been bad at that for years. If the new team comes in and does the same thing, conflicting advice, confusing policies, it won't matter who's in charge. People won't believe them. And without public trust, a health agency can't function. That's the part both sides are missing here.
All right, last one for you. If you were in charge, what would real reform of the CDC look like?
First, separate science from politics. That means clear, transparent communication, even when the truth isn't what politicians want to hear. Second, accountability. Admit mistakes, don't bury them. And third, focus on actual public health, not culture war fights. If the CDC rebuilt itself on those principles, maybe people would start to trust again. But if it keeps being treated like a partisan trophy, then forget it. It'll never regain legitimacy.
Daniel, I see you already drawing triangles between Pfizer, Fauci, and Area 51 on your corkboard. Let's hear it. Do you think this CDC shakeup was just house cleaning or part of a bigger agenda?
Oh, it's part of a much bigger agenda. The CDC has always been a political arm disguised as science. From pushing pharma narratives to manipulating data, it's been captured for decades. This purge isn't about reform. It's about who controls the narrative going forward. RFK Jr. is taking a wrecking ball to the old guard, sure, but don't think for a second that it ends there. What you're really watching is a fight for control over the machinery that tells Americans what to believe about health.
Okay, but some people say you're seeing shadows. Isn't this just one administration doing what every administration does? Putting its people in charge? Why do you see this as more than normal political turnover?
Because the stakes are different now. After COVID, public health isn't just policy, it's culture, it's identity, it's control. If you can tell people when to mask, when to stay home, what to inject, you control society. Whoever controls the CDC controls more than health. They control freedom. That's why this fight is bigger than just swapping personnel. It's about who gets to steer the narrative of reality itself.
All right, give us the big picture, Daniel. Pull it all together. What do you think this signals for the next few years in health policy?
It signals that health policy will be ground zero for the culture war. The resignations are just the opening act. Expect every guideline, every announcement, every outbreak to be politicized. This isn't about better health outcomes. It's about narrative warfare. And if you think the elites are going to give up that control, you're dreaming. This is the new battlefield, plain and simple.
Skylar, you've been shaking your head since Brian opened his mouth. You see this totally differently, don't you? Was this purge about accountability, or was it pure sabotage of science?
It was sabotage, without question. You don't fix public health by gutting it. These were career experts with decades of knowledge, and now they're gone because they clashed with a political appointee who's made a career out of undermining vaccines and spreading conspiracy theories. That doesn't build trust, it destroys it. People want consistent, reliable information, and what they're getting instead is chaos, resignations, and a health agency turned into a political circus.
Okay, but the other side would say those same experts lost public trust during COVID and botched the messaging. Isn't some change better than none? Skylar, if the old CDC couldn't be trusted, why keep them?
Because expertise matters. Yes, they made mistakes, but replacing scientists with politicians doesn't fix that. It makes it worse. We're not going to solve complex public health crises by turning the CDC into a partisan megaphone. If people didn't trust the old guard, they're certainly not going to trust RFK Jr. running around with an axe. This isn't reform, it's destruction, and it puts everyone at risk when the next health crisis hits.
All right, one more. Let's bring it home. What do you think this means for ordinary Americans who just want to know who to trust?
It means they're going to be stuck in the middle of a shouting match instead of getting clear guidance. People already tuned out during COVID because they didn't know who to believe. Now it'll be even worse. Instead of science, they'll hear politics. Instead of solutions, they'll hear spin. And regular families will be left guessing, which is the worst possible outcome in a real crisis. This isn't reform, it's reckless, and it leaves people vulnerable.
So Brian calls it long overdue accountability. Rachel says it's reform wrapped in politics. Daniel says it's the new battlefield for control. And Skylar says it's sabotage that makes us weaker. Either way, the CDC just lost a chunk of its leadership, and America's trust in public health is on life support. The only question is, was this surgery or just malpractice? Quick merch break. 2 new 20-ounce tumblers just hit the store. One says, "Not ashamed of the cross or the Constitution for the Christian patriots out there." And the other is our Gen X skull design with the unapologetic "fuck your feelings." Stainless steel, built tough, and guaranteed to trigger someone at the office. Grab yours now at Data Dissonance store. All right, before we shut it down, let's go around the table one last time. The CDC's leadership just imploded. RFK Jr. is running the show at health, and people are split between calling this reform or sabotage. Big picture? What does this moment tell us about America right now? Brian, kick us off.
My final thought is this. For years, the CDC acted like it was untouchable. They played politics with people's lives during COVID. They ruined livelihoods, they wrecked schools, and then they refused to admit mistakes. That arrogance destroyed trust. Now, for the first time in decades, the so-called experts are being held accountable. Will it be messy? Sure, but it's a necessary mess. You don't fix rot without tearing out the foundation. People can call it revenge, but I call it reform. If RFK Jr. and Trump are the ones finally forcing the CDC to answer to the public, then good. That's what draining the swamp actually looks like.
My final thought is that this is both a win and a loss. It's a win because the CDC desperately needed change. No one trusted them anymore, and credibility is the most valuable currency a health agency can have. But it's also a loss because of how it looks. Sweeping resignations and political appointments make people think the system is rigged, no matter who's in charge. The real tragedy is that ordinary Americans, parents, workers, seniors, just want reliable information they can trust, and they're not going to get it from an agency that looks like a political battlefield. Reform is needed, but if the reform itself looks like a coup, then the trust deficit only deepens.
My final thought is that this was never just about science. It was about control. The elites figured out during COVID that if you can control health policy, you can control every aspect of daily life. Where you go, what you wear, who you see, what you inject. That's raw power. The CDC has always been an arm of that system, not a check on it. What's happening now is just a shift in who holds the reins. Today, it's RFK Jr. pulling the strings. Tomorrow, it could be someone else. Don't let the headlines fool you. This isn't reform, it's a transfer of power in a much bigger game. The only real solution is breaking the machine entirely and decentralizing health so the people, not the elites, decide what's best for them.
My final thought is that what happened this week makes America weaker, not stronger. You don't fight misinformation by gutting the institutions that are supposed to protect public health. You improve them. You modernize them. You make them more transparent. But instead, we've politicized them to the point where the average person won't believe anything the CDC says anymore, whether it's true or not. That means the next time there's a real health crisis, people won't know who to trust, and lives will be lost because of it. Reform should have been about building something better. Instead, we've turned science into another partisan food fight, and the people caught in the middle are going to pay the price.
And here's where I land. The CDC collapse is America in a nutshell. Part reform, part revenge, part circus. Brian's right that the arrogance had to end. Rachel's right that perception matters as much as reality. Daniel's right that control is the real prize. And Skylar's right that ordinary people are the ones who suffer when institutions lose credibility. The truth is, public health has been politicized for decades. It just took COVID to make it obvious. Once you mix politics with science, you don't get better outcomes. You get confusion, mistrust, and division. And now we're watching the fallout. Maybe RFK Jr. is tearing down the old guard to build something better. Or maybe this is just another round of musical chairs in Washington's never-ending power game. Either way, the CDC as we knew it is gone. Whether that's good news or bad news depends on where you sit. But one thing's for sure. Trust is hard to earn, easy to lose, and almost impossible to get back once it's gone. That's the real epidemic we're facing, and no vaccine is going to fix it. Thanks for hanging with us tonight. Don't forget to subscribe, grab some merch, and as always, remember to speak truth, stir thought,